Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we return to our annual Christmas episode with a look at the 1970 musical film Scrooge, starring Albert Finney. This is a movie I've been wanting to do for years. Now, bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. And by the way, it's on YouTube all over the place. But warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the upcoming Young Captain Nemo series from Fievel & Friends Macmillan Books. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth Studios, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Henceforth known as the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come.
Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. From the Rio Grande Valley, Professor David Bowles has received awards from the American Library Association, Texas Institute of Letters, and the Texas Associated Press. To the dozen books he's written, he's recently added Feathered Serpent, Dark Heart of the Sky, Myths of Mexico, and the YA steampunk graphic novel Clockwork Curandera. Say hello, David.
Kiwalewe, how are you doing?
I am so excited to have you back for this supersized episode. It is really cool, and when we do our opening thoughts, well, actually, go ahead and how did this come to pass that we're doing this supersized episode? It's because for once the cast got together and I was not there.
Well, we were representing the podcast at the Central Texas Teen Comic-Con in Round Rock. Drew and Tony and I did a panel together in which we were talking about reimagining horror and graphic novels. And it was a really great time, and we got to hang out a lot and chat and talk about all the many things we have in common. And I hadn't met either of them, and we've never been on a podcast episode together since I'm always subbing for one of them. And so Drew was like, "We've got to remedy that. Let's have you on this upcoming podcast, and it's perfect because of the season, and we'll do it as like a Christmas special." So here I am.
That is really, really cool. Someday we're going to have like a magnificently huge show with everybody, including you and Adam and Jamie, and somehow, and basically I just won't talk, and that will be God knows,
that would be
20,
awesome.
30 minutes of any given episode.
You'll be like Chris Matthews going, you.
Yes. Yes. What Chris Matthews does to keep it moving, he doesn't actually talk a lot, but he'll do exactly that. He'll go, "You stop talking, you." And yeah, I love it.
We need to do it live.
And that voice, the voice you hear also in Denver, as always. Color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. She's also a member of the improv a cappella vocal group In Harmony's Way. Say hello, Julia.
Hello, Julia. I'm actually the Ghost of Christmas Present according to our Christmas card this year. We actually did a Christmas Carol themed Christmas card, which I am in the process of sending out, and I am the Ghost of Christmas Present. So there you go.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, it's true.
And who do you think is Scrooge in this scenario?
Oh, I can only imagine.
Give us a ball humbug, Jason.
No, I am not a Scrooge-alicious kind of person. I just
He's going to break out and I hate people any second.
I hate people.
He does. He says that all the time.
You know, the thing that cracked me up about the I Hate People song is that there is a old one of the original English psychobilly bands called the Meteors, and they have a song called I Hate People. They doesn't really sound like that one, mind you, but when he was singing that, I half expected him to take off the top hat and have like a big crazy multicolored pompadour under his top hat.
That would have been pretty awesome.
The and that whole generation of performers in these big showcase musicals, a lot of them were not singers, they were just performers. And so Julia will give us the weird history of who wound up playing this part and how much just how much screwing one another over was involved in that. But none of them could sing. That's the hilarious thing about Richard Harris, Rex Harrison, and Albert Finney is not a damn one of them could actually sing, and it was not important. they're being cast as stars of musicals at the time. Yeah, Richard Harris, by the way, who was almost the star here, had like a #1 hit in 1967 by Jimmy Webb. It was called MacArthur Park, and he could not sing a note. He had never been trained as a singer. It was one of the most difficult songs ever written to sing, and yeah, so those things happen. It's alchemy. Okay, Scrooge is a 1970 British musical adaptation of Charles Dickens' 1843 story A Christmas Carol. It was filmed at Shepperton Studios, where a lot of the horror films that we've talked about were filmed, in London between January and May 1970. Dream and starred Albert Finney as Ebenezer Scrooge and Alec Guinness as Jacob Marley. This film won a Golden Globe for Finney's performance and 4 Oscar nominations, including Best Original Song for Thank You Very Much. And if you've ever seen a clip, one of those clip videos that shows like all these people dancing through the history of musicals, and they'll put it to the tune of something new, you often see the crowd dancing scene from Thank You Very Much. It's become just sort of go-to footage. So David, you're our infrequent guest, so I guess you'll go first. Let's do it this way. I may not even have an opening thought because I have a feeling you guys will hit it all. Let's go David, Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I don't know, I will just move us on to discussing the film itself. So David, start us off. Just like a couple of minutes. What are your opening thoughts on Scrooge?
Well, I wasn't prepared to like it as much as I did, but I really, really enjoyed it. I thought Albert Finney was really, really great, and of course I was shocked to find out how young he was. There was, to me, and it's interesting that you say that it was shot on sound stages that were used for horror films, because there are scenes that feel a bit horror-esque. They have this kind of vibe, and then with Finney kind of lurching around almost like a monster in some scenes, and like this mumbling and dirty, and I mean, for a rich miser, he's just kind of disgusting, and it kept making me think of remember the groundskeeper from the Harry Potter movies? What's the name of the groundskeeper? The one who has that cat. I can't think of his name right now. He reminded me a lot of.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right? So
I'm not the Harry Potter guy, so no, I have no idea. But that's okay.
Yeah.
David Bradley is the actor that you're thinking.
Yeah,
of,
exactly, David Bradley. Like it was a really, really fantastic. It reminded me of David Bradley, in his like kind of like mumblecore kind of way of acting and singing.
Argus Filch.
Yeah,
Wow.
Argus Filch. Yeah, Mr. Filch.
Well, he's playing. Wait a minute, that guy's playing the Doctor in the Christmas episode.
That's right.
Out.
That's right.
All right, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, not at all. And so, I mean, I really enjoyed that. I thought that Alec Guinness was like really, really great. It was like this bizarre like movements he did, in lieu of any kind of, because most of the effects, as Tony brought up before the show started, are practical. And so his movements and his way of kind of sliding around and undulating and so forth. So it was really a lot to like. The guy who plays Bob Cratchit was really good. Lots and lots of stuff. And as I was watching it, I was like, oh, so in Scrooged, well, when Bill Murray wants to put on like this live musical, this is kind of like what would have happened.
Yes.
I've seen Scrooge 50 times, and I've never seen this musical at all. And so it was an interesting. In my mind, I kept seeing every time they would show Tiny Tim. I kept imagining, what was her name? The gymnast
Mary
that was going to play her. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, that's right.
I kept expecting her to pop up. That would have been hilarious. So, yeah, no, I really enjoyed it a lot. There were a couple of things that were a little wonky, but for the most part, it was a great experience. Had me glued to YouTube for 2 hours, so it was great.
Yeah. Excellent. Julia, I know you've seen this movie because I make you watch it like every year. So, but nevertheless, what are your overarching thoughts?
I love it. I really think that Albert Finney's amazing because, yes, he is 33 years old during the making of this, but he is aged to be probably in his 60s maybe, and he accomplishes that with the best old people makeup I've ever seen. Like it's 3 hours that he sat every day in the chair, and somehow in however many years it's been since then, 40-ish years, that it's been what year is this made? 70, so it's been 40, almost 50 years. That they haven't, not only have they not improved on the makeup, but they've gotten worse. Like they've never matched it, because every other thing I've ever watched where the person is aged, they look ridiculous, and this, he
Yeah.
looks authentically older. Plus, of course, it's brilliant acting. I mean, the way he carries himself, the way he contorts his face, the voice, everything about him just says grumpy old man, and it's not, it doesn't feel like you're just, he's just faking it. So I really, that to me is half the battle, is just getting that character, right. And then, I mean, the spirits are wonderful, the crowd is wonderful. I actually really like the musical. I like the music. It's not my favorite in terms of the songs, but I did enjoy them, and I do like the dancing, and it's a moving story. I cried a lot because it's just a sweet story. I mean, that story always makes me cry anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, really neat.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Tony, have you seen Scrooge before?
I have. It's been a while though. It's been a while since I've seen this one. I can't remember exactly when. Again, like I'll go with everybody else. I think Finney's Scrooge, he's so creepy and gross.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people play it very curmudgeonly, but he's actually, as he gets older, you see him kind of turn more and more just hideous, which he plays amazingly. It's such a good performance, and I'd forgotten that, because there's kind of a mold for Scrooge where he is just this older guy who's kind of grumpy. Like he's more like Oscar the Grouch in a lot of things, whereas Finney's Scrooge is hunched over and he's just grody and everything's so decrepit, and it's so effective. I was really blown away by that. I think it's probably my new favorite Scrooge, as far as really capturing just somebody twisted into this thing over the years.
Yeah. Well, I'll say something afterwards. Drew, what about you? Have you ever seen this particular Scrooge before? I'm so excited that for some of you, it's been a long time since you've come to this one, because it makes it a more fun conversation. Drew, what about you?
So I have never actually somehow seen this one. I think maybe because there are so many versions of this story, this somehow slipped beneath my radar. And in fact, every time Jason's talked about this, I somehow got it in my head that he was talking about the 1984 version with George C. Scott.
You'd be forgiven for thinking that. I mean, that's a pretty well-known version, but yeah.
I really enjoyed this movie. The character that Finney reminds me the most of visually is Dr. Caligari from the old cabinet. Old cabinet of Dr. Caligari, but I actually feel like he's a more nuanced version of Scrooge than what we usually get. Like when he's talking to the various spirits, and you kind of see his goodness kind of crack through. It's a little less pat the way he plays it. For some reason, it felt more naturalistic. But most of the time, when I see versions of the story, it doesn't really seem like Scrooge wants to be redeemed until he's tossed into his own grave. Like here, you do start to see that crack throughout the entire film. I also thought that this had a very spooky look to it, which of course, as a horror fan, I appreciate that they really did play up a lot of the innate spookiness of it. And I couldn't help think, why did Hammer never do a version of A Christmas Carol? Imagine Christopher Lee is Scrooge and Peter Cushing is Bob Cratchit. That would have been amazing. They did Hound of the Baskervilles. Why did they never do this? I liked everything about this movie except for the music. I thought the music, for the most part, was really dull. And every time they started singing, I couldn't wait for them to be done, because I just thought that the music was kind of unmemorable. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't like I wanted to rip my ears off or anything, but it was just really bland. And there was a lot of the talk singing that we were talking about, which was very popular in musicals during this time period. Yeah. And I don't always care for that. I sometimes it works better than others. It didn't work for me here. That all being said, and it's strange saying that this because it's a musical and you think like if the music didn't work for you, you would hate it. I actually still really enjoyed this movie because, like I said, I felt like it was an atmospheric take on the story, and I just love that because that's kind of something I've always wanted to see, is a sort of Hammer horror version of A Christmas Carol, and this was almost that, except there was singing.
Yeah, yeah. It's fair. A lot, and we'll comment on the music some more in general. But I mean, a lot of people weren't all that excited here. Certain of these tunes have stuck with me forever. I've seen this movie many, many, many times. I first saw it when I was a kid. I've always been really moved by it. It always makes me cry. I really love it. But I think the thing that I always remember the most is all the stuff with the uncanny business of him observing his own youth, which is incredible. All the stuff but that doesn't spring to mind from other versions of A Christmas Carol. I'm sure it's there. It just never really stuck with me. But the stuff about the lady he's going to marry and how he grows apart and his desperation as a sort of waking ghost to talk to himself and get himself to live his past differently. So all that stuff is profound and very moving to me. We should start with just work our way through the musical. By the way, so by starting that, I will put this film into context. So this is 1970, and so what we are at this point historically is the very, very, very trailing end of the big showpiece musical period. So you had some gigantic films in the past decade, things like Sound of Music and My Fair Lady and Camelot, which a lot of people felt wasn't as memorable as it could have been, but a lot of these like great big musicals. But by this time, there'd been also a few misses. Things like Hello Dolly just didn't get the attention that people thought that it should. And I think Scrooge, although it was very well received and received award nominations, this is really the end of that period. These sort of giant, super expensive musicals. And when they're done, they are done. You don't have any more giant, expensive musicals after this, really, for something like, forever. There's a few here and there, but generally they are just occasional things. Whereas at the time, it was very normal to have like a major musical. Anyway, so it fits into that context. Joya, we open up on Ebenezer Scrooge, our surly moneylender. How is it that Albert Finney, how did he wind up in this role?
Richard Harris had the role first, and then he had to take over direction of the hero in Israel. So then Rex Harrison agrees to take it, but he has to back out because of a commitment to another play that he's doing. And also, by the way, he was having an affair with Richard Harris's wife at the time, who he'd end up marrying later. So then Albert Finney, who'd been offered the role before Harrison but had rejected it at first, reconsidered it once he read the script and was like, yeah, that sounds great. Plus, he was a business associate of Michael Medwin, who's the co-writer, who actually plays his nephew in the film.
So Albert Finney is introduced as Ebenezer Scrooge on a day when it's a Victorian Christmas, and and I say that like with quotations around it, because it was actually during Dickens' Christmas Carol is very important to the development of the idea of celebrating Christmas in the way that we we recognize all of these traditions of Christmas carols and yada yada. But Drew, you mentioned that Ebenezer seems like Caligari. To me, he looks like Edison's Frankenstein. The whole sort of hunched over and snarled lip. It is so funny that it's such a mannered performance. And yet he also seems so human at times when he connects with these memories. We should skip. Everybody knows the business about Cratchit. I will say this one did remind me of what a rotten boss and rotten person Scrooge is. We are seeing, we see him being a terrible person, not just by being bad to Cratchit, but also because he he doesn't want to give to the poor. David, you had this
Oh yeah,
comment
and he
that he
goes off
seemed like
collecting debts. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen that, and I don't. I mean, maybe I have, but he actually goes around collecting people's debts.
On
and he's
Christmas
like,
Eve.
yeah, on Christmas Eve, going so far as to duck inside the little puppet theater things to collect
Yes.
debts
While he's performing. Yeah.
while the
Yeah.
guy's performing. And it just added this layer of, so this guy, I mean, he's his own enforcer. He goes out there and people are afraid of him. People are, they're visibly,
Yes.
startled, and which makes it so much stronger, when he sees the future later on, their reaction, you like feel it viscerally. You're like, yeah, I would be celebrating too.
Yes.
And
He's
then
a
he sings that
usurer.
he sings that wonderful song, I Hate
Yes.
People, and the lyrics of which I think could be sung by like Orrin Hatch or Donald Trump or anybody in the Republican side of the Senate. It was the lyrics of the song were like, whoa. I mean, I was really impressed and really impacted, and it was very timely to be
It's a
watching
very
it
funny
on the heels of.
When I see the indolent classes sitting on their indolent asses, drinking wine from indolent glasses, I hate people. He's wonderful. He's being like tailed by all the children, all the street urchins, just kind of follow him around because he's hilarious.
And then making fun of him in the Father Christmas song, that was great.
I love all this stuff.
Well, and when
These are
Cratchit is asking him for his wages, and he's like, when Cratchit's asking him for his wages, and he's like, I'm guessing you're gonna want a paid day off for Christmas. And he's like, you're just stealing from me by having me pay you for a day that you're not even working.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I know a lot of these lines, to Tony's point, a lot of this stuff are in the book, but I mean, it all feels very fresh, like poor excuse for picking a man's pocket once a year,
Mm-hmm.
They have to lay it on thick. You have to lay it on thick because, of course, we have to believe something's at stake in his eventual rehabilitation, right? But nevertheless, he is a horrible guy, and I love what Tony and Drew were saying about how his horribleness has just caused him to just sort of decay like a mummy. he's he's just, his hair is gross, his his home is hideous and has ladders around. I don't know what's going on with but it's his big tomb-like home that is just he's
I wonder why he
he's
has such a big house if clearly he doesn't furnish
I
it
think
or
it's probably.
clean.
I think it's for stature. So he buys the house because that's what you do when you're rich.
Yeah.
Because you have to have a big house for show. But because he's a miser, other than he probably at one point, when Marley was around, had at least a dinner or two because that's what you do to keep up appearances. But I would say. And then eventually he's so horrible and nobody wants to put up with him that he just lives there and lets it decay. I mean, this is the person who locks himself in his bedchambers with triple bolts inside his own home.
He's too stingy. He's too stingy, and he doesn't trust people enough to have servants. So
Right, exactly. They would steal. He'd probably go, well, they'll steal from me anyway.
Exactly.
Those people.
Mm-hmm.
And then he sleeps with a little bag of money next to his heart. It's so bizarre.
Wasn't that interesting? I was hoping you would explain that, or if everybody else caught that. He literally sleeps with a purse of money on his chest. I mean, what is this? Is this for good luck? Like, what is that?
I think that once his fiance says you care about money more than anything else, and he lives a few years where that's true, I think that's at the point where he goes, well, you know what? If that is true, then I'm going to own this. This is truly my passion. As terrible and unforgiving and uncaring as this money is, this is truly who I am.
It's literally his mistress.
I clutch it. Yeah,
it's literally his mistress.
Yeah, and also I think partly too is that he keeps his money in a safe at his office, but he needs to have a little bit of walking around money, but he doesn't trust anybody to leave it anywhere in his house because God forbid they should break in and steal it, so he just has it he sleeps with it so that it doesn't disappear.
His bedroom is a panic room, really. I mean, it's you're right. He is deadbolted in there, I guess, to keep him away from the crowds if they ever revolt or whatever. If they go all French Revolution, he'll be locked in here, only to be burned out, I suppose.
He probably has his money there as well, and so that's his. Well, people know I'm rich; they'll try to take it from me if I let them. So I'll triple bolt myself.
Yeah.
Remember, he hides the key. He hides like the key in this like recessed hole in a nightstand, and he sets on top of it a vase. Yeah.
That's right. Wow. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I love the business. I mean, Albert Finney is. I mean, you got to credit the director, but I mean, he's doing business all the time. You know, he doesn't just get up from the table if, he pulls a drawer out of the desk to put the drawer on top of the money that he's counting at his own desk inside the lending house that he works in. For the 30 seconds he's going to be at the door, he is going to guard that cash. I'm not mocking. Obviously, you have to guard your cash, but still, my gosh, this guy
his employee is right there, and he can't.
Right. Yes, right. Cratchit.
I'm going to go answer the door, keep an eye on the money kind of thing.
Mind you, the employee that's stealing from him by taking a day off.
Yeah. He goes, I give him one Christmas off years ago, and now he wants it every time. A martyr to my own generosity. Anyway, into his life.
At least he's a prime example for trickle-down economics.
Yes.
Look at all the jobs he created. And look at all the way he gives to the poor. Yeah. Pretty good. Yeah.
Well, he does eventually, but he has to be visited by ghosts first.
He pays his taxes.
And you know what? Don't let me end without talking about the finale. I have some things I was thinking about, so don't let me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So into this miser's life comes, I have to say, probably one of the most memorable performances by Alec Guinness I've ever seen, which is Jacob Marley. This is literally Jacob Marley can be a pretty dull and unmemorable character, but this is pretty crazy. Does anybody want to describe Jacob Marley?
Yeah, I mean, they've given a traditional. So they decided not to make him look transparent or translucent.
Right.
So they decided to go pure practical effects. So he's white, like they've painted him white. All of his clothes are white. They've dyed everything. His chains that he carries with him as penance, along with his money boxes that he has to carry around, are all, that same color. But what's fantastic is, since it's all practical, he's decided to walk around almost as if he's floating.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And he has this like weird floaty walk. Stops, he settles into like how he stops.
Yes.
He settles into each pose. So as he's posing, he's got all these different poses, but he settles into each one. And then when he decides to walk, he goes back to this very strange floaty gait, and the way he can pull it off. I was watching him. You can tell this is a person who's so good at their craft. I'm sure he workshopped this. What if I made it like, we're not going to float, so what if I float myself? What if I do this? Is obviously he's a stage performer as well, so he's got to sell that. And it is,
and I totally bought it.
It was a lot like the Twin Peaks thing where they filmed it backwards and then ran it forward, or filmed it. They walked backwards and then they ran it forward. But I don't think that's what they did. Now he does actually float for a while, and actually, when they did that with the wires and the harness, he got a double hernia from that, and he really kind of hated that part. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awful. But the whole when he's just kind of walking without the aid of anything else, he still sells all of that, and it is amazing. And the scene
where Scrooge asks him to take a seat, and he pulls the chair closer and then just sits in the air. That was fantastic.
That was awesome.
Oh, that all of the things, because he's I guess he's been dead long enough that it kind of, all these worldly things don't really matter anymore. So, and it does make it also, it's a really good bit, and it sells how his ghostliness.
Yeah,
because usually he does just kind of hang out in the chair. That's usually, when you see tons of versions of this, he shows up in the chair. He may come in dramatically, but in general, they just kind of sit there and talk. Whereas he's decided, oh, well, I'm not going to be, that's too pat. How about if I pull the chair up and then not use the chair? It's so really good.
I think you just hit the nail on the head. I feel like there are so many, and even in 1970, there had already been a lot of versions of this, and a lot of different ones that are actually reasonably popular. But what makes this one stand out, outside of the fact that it is a musical, which there are now other musical versions of the story, it's not, what they do, it's the same. It's the little details that they do differently. Because would be a really easy thing to be boring, because it's like, okay, a Christmas Carol, the fact that you have someone like Alec Guinness who really thinks about, like, okay, Jacob Marley, like, what can I do to make this interesting? Because you're right, most of the times you watch these movie versions of A Christmas Carol, and that's a dull character to watch.
Yeah. He's there's so much humor in Jacob Marley as done by Alec Guinness. It just and to me, the humorous bits and just these choices are what does give this an element of horror. There's something about how strange he is that is truly disturbing. That this is what that he's kind of amused at what's going to happen to Scrooge. He's appalled. He's there to do a job, but he's also just kind of he's a little blasé about it in a very funny way. And then there's one moment when he gets angry and he terrifies Scrooge. I can't remember what it is that Scrooge says, but he just starts screaming and lifts off the ground and bangs all of his chains together, and he's really disturbing. And all of this is just Obi-Wan Kenobi standing there doing a job. I mean, that's the amazing thing that
well, it would be very easy to imagine. I talked about like a Hammer version of this. It would be very easy to imagine like Michael Ripper or Patrick Troughton or somebody doing like a version, like this version of Jacob Marley. This is like the most straight, outside of the stuff with the Ghost of Christmas Future. Like this is the most like straight ghost story stuff that we get in the movie, and it's really cool. That's what really, like, the part where he takes Scrooge by the hand and goes up in the air and you see all these like ghosts lying above.
Oh yeah, that was pretty effective.
I love that stuff. Like, I was like, man, like, this is the sort of things I've always kind of wanted to see in an adaptation of the story. So it was great that, like, I'm stunned. I've never seen this movie before.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of interesting. The Jim Carrey like CG animated version. Now that I've seen this, I could see that it clearly cribbed from this version like a lot.
Did it really?
You guys have seen?
I haven't seen it.
I did not.
When I was watching it, I was like, okay, they lifted that, they ripped this off. I mean, and of course, but in a ridiculously heightened manic kind of way, unfortunately. But there's definitely an attempt. And you could see, now that I think about it, you could see Jim Carrey trying to channel some of this performance of Albert Finney. He doesn't pull it off, but it certainly informs what he's doing, I think.
That's really interesting. No, I've never seen it. I guess I need to watch that. Cool. Okay. Well, when we come out of this, I'm going to have to get a lot of recommendations for other versions of the Christmas Carol to watch. So, all right. Anyway, as Drew mentions, there's this musical bit that Alec Guinness does, where he's just looking at all of the spirits that are moving across the sky. It is scary, and that winds up as a nightmare. Each of these segments with a ghost winds up with Scrooge waking up and going, "Oh, thank God it was a nightmare," and then it's not, because, of course, this is the longest night that any human has ever had to endure, because he's going to be visited by three more spirits. All of this is stuff that we know by heart, right? So
1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Is that it? 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. So at 1 o'clock comes the ghost of Christmas Past, who is this hilarious, somewhat like amused, I don't know, upper class Victorian lady with a giant white hand warmer, and she takes him to see his own past, And that's that's the stuff that I found so moving, because we see young Albert Finney. First of all, we see the actor in his actual face,
Yeah.
and they do a lot of cool stuff with the split screen and everything, and we see what happened. They spend a lot of time. This movie's 2 hours long, so they spend a long time setting up his relationship with his fiance, and then bringing that whole story to a close.
Yeah. And first with the sister, though, we see a sister first, and how
that's right.
how much he loves her and how much he misses her. You could see his heart, like Drew was saying. It was Drew, right? That was saying you start seeing these cracks early on, and this is where you see it when he is a boy in the school and he can't go home for the holidays because his dad doesn't want him there, and his sister comes in, and it's just like, so, oh my God. And you see Albert Finney's face just lighting up when she comes in, or when he first sees her riding on the back of some wagon with other kids and singing a song, and his eyes just light up, and this dead monster that we've been looking at, so you see the human being in him, and you're like, oh shit, it's going to be one of those performances.
Yeah.
And
well, it also helps connect the dots with Tiny Tim, I think, better in a way than a lot of other versions of this.
Yeah, you're right.
Do like I said, I really feel like Finney. Yes, his version of Scrooge is very monstrous, but he's also probably the most human I've ever seen. He's not a cartoon character, and I think that's something I absolutely appreciate. What he's doing as an actor, because this is a character we've seen done a lot before this. They've done it dozens of times after this. It seems like any guy that's from the United Kingdom and of the appropriate age has probably played Scrooge at some point.
Sure.
So
plus George C. Scott. Yes.
Yeah. And George C. Scott was it's been a while since I've seen that one, but George C. Scott is pretty good in the part. But
he is a force to be reckoned with. I remember that. But and the funny thing is, that's 1984. That's still a freaking long time ago. But the other thought I wanted to mention, there's a bit of dialogue I love here, where they're watching the party, and Fezziwig, the boss that he worked for, that he apprenticed under, has thrown this big party. And the ghost says, well, it's not such an impressive party. It's only 2 or 3 pounds, 3 or 4 pounds. She goes, he probably spent 3 or 4 pounds on this party. And he goes, that's not the point. He had the power to make us he controlled our happiness. Everything that he did affected our lives. And
he tells her, you understand nothing. That gave me goosebumps. You understand nothing. You're the ghost of Christmas past, and you're in the past, but you don't get it. I do. I'm remembering now what it meant for someone to make me happy. It was very moving.
It's so moving.
The line delivery was great.
Yeah. As this Scrooge learns things through the night, through things that he himself says out loud as he realizes them. That's astonishing. I mean, the only other example I can think of like that is when I never thought about this connection before, but in our town, Thornton Wilder has Emily go back to one of her least important birthdays, and she gets so upset when she realizes the value of every moment, and she says, does anybody realize the value? And the stage manager says something like, well, no. He says, some poets know, but generally no. and that's what's going on here. It's amazing stuff.
I have to tell you guys, make my husband blush a little bit, but I actually fell in love with him because he was playing that role of the stage manager in our high school play of our town, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's so dreamy.
Oh my God.
Awesome.
I was like 15 years old.
I can't believe you're telling the story. Yeah, no, that's really sweet. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Joya, you were working tech on that play, right?
Well, I did props, and I did a little minor role, but I did the.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, you were the fountain. Yeah, you did the lady who runs the fountain. Which, yeah.
The starter fountain. Yep.
That's 1980.
Let's not go there. Just quiet.
Everyone who listens to the show already knows how old the two of you are. So
was in Christmas past. So we can leave it at that.
No, actually, no. It's worth saying that we started dating 30 years ago last month. So there you go.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
May you endure another 30.
Thank you.
I know. Yeah.
Endure.
It
Que lo
doesn't.
aguantes
It doesn't.
otros 30 años.
Yep.
It's that's so sweet. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I remember that really well. My family was so impressed with how well you did the pantomime on the Minnesota.
Okay, moving on.
It's true. Anyway.
Yay! Someone's taking him off our hands.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. No kidding. So, all right. So he this is one where he doesn't wake up from a nightmare. He goes, "I'm done with this. I can't watch this anymore." And so she whisks him away, and he's already been sort of beaten up by the whole experience, and there's still 2 more ghosts to go. That's the hilarious thing. And,
he already feels
each
bad
time
for he already feels bad for turning away the carolers.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. He does feel bad. Should have given them some money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's a really, really good point. Yeah, and we'll get to a moment later when he meets the Ghost of Christmas Future, and he already knows the score. He's like, obviously, I'm gonna have to go through this, but I get it. I
get it. Take me now. I want to go. Yeah, it's like really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So second ghost, the Ghost of Christmas Present, is kind of a big respite from the sort of the abject sadness of seeing so much joy in his past. And there's a rhythm
under his past. I mean, like loses because he didn't.
Yeah.
Sees the joy, but then he also sees what he did to lose his love.
Yeah. There's this tremendous light coming through the door, and it opens up on as Tony mentioned, it's all practical effects, just this enormous glittering feast. And Tony, can you describe for us the way that the Ghost of Christmas Present is this how he's normally presented? Is this I'm trying to
really huge. Like he's a presence unto like everything is larger than life, and he's usually presented as towering.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was wondering, is he usually the Green Man like this, like a sort of enormous woodsy Santa Claus?
So I don't know. And it has been a while. I've read the book a bunch of times, and I've just drawn a blank. But I think he's done so well in this one. If I remember correctly, people just kind of crib this one because it's just so cool. A lot of times he's more. Yeah, he's got kind of sort of a pagan element, but also he's kind of the true spirit of Christmas as it stands. It's not as crass as making him Father Christmas. He's like he is literally the spirit of Christmas as it stands. So all of the pagan elements, all of the feasting and joy, and just a larger than life spirit because it encompasses everything Christmas. It's kind of that's where his role lies. So, and I think we get a lot of this informed. I think a lot of Christmas Carol movies after this.
Yeah, he's cool. I mean, I love his big green robe and his sort of very serious attention to joy. It's a strange it's an odd he's an alien for one thing. I love how
he says that there's a new one every year, and he talks about how his brothers have reported to him that on this strange little world there's this strange little man, and it's there is a suggestion that he's otherworldly.
Yeah.
You know what's always bothered me about the Ghost of Christmas Present in this story, though?
Yeah.
Technically, he actually shows him a Christmas future because he takes him to the following day. It's still night to Scrooge. And that's
you are correct.
It just means this Christmas from this year.
I mean, I get it, but it's always.
But you're right.
I don't know.
If you took him anywhere at 2:00 in the morning, it would just be people sleeping. So.
Yeah. It's always bugged me. I don't know why. Like even as a little kid, I would get like stressed out by that problem. I mean, I understand from like a story standpoint, there would be no narrative gain to show
the Ghost of Christmas
sleep in bed.
The Ghost of Christmas near future, immediate future.
Yeah.
The Ghost of Christmas in the next 24 hours.
The Ghost of Christmas tomorrow.
the ghost of the present Christmas day. You know?
Yes.
Right.
Something just complicated like that. But you're right. Yeah, that's always frustrated me as well. I remember thinking as a kid at night, like, because I used to think, because my family celebrated on Christmas Eve, I was like, how is he seeing the Cratchits? Are they still up at 2:00 in the morning? They're done. What the hell?
That's funny.
I can safely say, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I can safely say that this has never occurred to me ever. Ever. It has never. It has never been something
You're a
I
big
thought
Dickens fan boy.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's a totally valid point. It's completely valid.
What really struck me about the scene was when Scrooge begins to drink the quote-unquote milk of human kindness, and with every gobletful that he drinks, he gets, lighter and lighter, and his face gets red, and he's got a big goofy smile, and he's, obviously getting inebriated. And when he's whisked away to his nephew's house, where his nephew's entertaining guests, he is just delighted. When they start playing the game, he rushes around from person to person, whispering the answer and laughing at them when they mess up, and just having a great time. He's like a little kid, just running around. And it's like, and you could see the facade cracking even more as he re-encounters the joy of being around other people. And it's so powerful that as the guests are leaving and saying goodbye, he stands next to his nephew and says goodbye to them with this, this effusiveness, and joy in his eyes. It's just amazing.
And yet, it's funny. But it's also funny that he's still a little bit miserly, because he's delighting when people screw up. He's like, "Oh, you're so stupid." When they're playing that game, he's like, "You missed it," but he is having a great time, and he wishes that he were. Actually, he didn't even wish he were part of it. It's like he feels like he is part of it, and just like when they do the future thing and they're singing the song about him,
he's kind of oblivious to why.
Yeah, he's so lovable in these scenes where he really wants to be a part of things, standing in the receiving, right, he capable of pretending for a moment that he's been a part of this party, which for no reason he has refused to be a part of, every year. And it's really amazing. Yes,
and it's the point at which I wanted him. I've seen this story so many times and read it multiple times, but it was at that point that I really, really wanted him to reform. I'm like, oh my God, you're such a good person. If you could just shake off this nonsense. Yeah.
Yes, this completely. Yeah, he's bitter because he's bitter. He's bitter because of things he brought on himself, and it's all just, it's a lot of choices on his part. So there's actually the two, he visits both, as you guys mentioned about visiting the Cratchit family. The other main thing, he asks what is going to become of Tiny Tim. And that's when the ghost of Christmas present just simply stares at him, and then quotes back, some horrible thing that he said about the poor when he was.
Let them just go ahead and die and bring down the numbers or something like that.
And it's amazing. I love the seriousness of the ghost of Christmas present. And
well, he does have a dry sense of humor, though.
Yes,
he is funny.
So that leaves for us only one ghost, which is
scary
the ghost of
Grim Reaper ghost.
Right. But before we get to him, I got two observations. One of them is the last thing that the ghost of Christmas present said, which is so one of the things that brings tears to your eyes, when he says something like, I have it exactly here. It's, remember, Scrooge, time is short, and suddenly you're not here anymore. It's amazing. And then that's it. That's the end of his visit with the ghost. And that brings us to the ghost of Christmas future. And he's terrifying the moment he walks in.
Well, and what's funny is that every time he's done with one of these ghosts, he goes, "Oh, I was just dreaming. Oh, thank God." I'm like, no, dude, you're still not just dreaming. So yes, he gets Grim Reaper, creepy ass ghost, who is going to show him his future, and he's like, okay, I'm braced for this. I know it's coming. I'm ready. Let's go. And then what is it? It's a great celebration of him. And it's like, thank you very much. Thank you very much. This the nice thing that anybody's ever done for me is this great song that the entire town is singing about Scrooge. So he's like, oh, great. In the future, everybody loves me and this is awesome. And he's like getting up and making speeches. And in fact, what
see
they're
the
celebrating,
coffin that they carry out.
yeah, in fact, what they're celebrating is that he has died and his coffin is being carried through the streets as people dance on it. And the other guy has ripped up his debts and and that's why they're so happy that he's not there anymore and all the debts are gone. So yes, that is really interesting. And so then he says, but he does think, because he has been affected by these other experiences, he does think, well, what happened with the Cratchits? And he looks in the window and he sees that the mom and kids are very sad and dad's not there and Tiny Tim's not there. And he asks where Tiny Tim is, and he's taken to the cemetery where Bob Cratchit is at the grave of his son. And then he's also shown his own grave, which is very,
But I really love his, look how happy I've made everybody. Like, he's oblivious. See, it just worked out fine. Look how happy everybody's just, I don't know why they're hanging out at my place. And that really ticks me off. But look, everybody, how could I be that bad? And they're just completely celebrating his death. And he didn't really get it till he's finally in the cemetery. Like,
he never
the lead up is he's like, see, come on, Ghost, how could this be so bad? All of that, and there's so much nuance because that's usually not how it's played. It's usually a much more like, how dare they? Whereas since he's had all this other experience, he's now like trying to justify his. I think he kind of catches on in his mind, but as he's playing it, he can't. How could this all be bad? What am I going to see in the future that's so wrong? And he doesn't get it until he's, almost literally thrown into his grave.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And
into his grave and all the way into hell.
Yeah, yes. And that's the other part that was just, I had forgotten that about this one. He wakes up. Usually he falls and wakes up in his bed. Like, that's usually the end of almost everyone. He falls, it was not true. I wasn't really in a grave. Or they'll have him, grave, like dirt being thrown on him, some horrible thing of him being buried alive. Whereas they take it a step further, and he is literally in hell. And Marley does he comes in on his like little like weird floaty walk and says, "Oh, congratulations! You're like you're Lucifer's accountant now. He's got this thing for you." And Scrooge really doesn't. Well, I guess that's not the worst thing. And then you realize, since it's hell, that he's in a freezing cold. He gets trapped. Everything burns him when he touches it. And then Marley, in his infinite jest, tells him, well, I think you're the only person in hell who's freezing. Which is not true if you go with Dante's interpretation of hell. But in this, it's a really funny joke. And, adds to this, how everything's kind of twisted by what you've done and how you're punished.
It looks so gorgeous, by the way, with all the red, and then his office, of course, because it's freezing, is that ice blue, but everything else is these stalactites and stalagmites that are just glowing red and burning and oh man.
And the way they dodge all of it, like, because once Scrooge knows it burns, he kind of, and then Marley kind of saunters / like undulates through this maze of stalactites. And so that was so good. Like, his portrayal is just fantastic. And Scrooge's realization is even, I think, has a lot more weight, all things considered, once he realizes that he is doomed to this thing that I think he's grown to loathe as much as he enjoys the wealth from it. That's his eternity, is this chilly, what he subjected others to.
Yeah.
And Marley's more than happy to have another. Oh, and he's so happy about Scrooge's chain.
Oh,
it was so big that they had to get extra devils to forge it. And that's an extra awesome touch. And it is huge, like these executioner hood style, executioner judges who are somehow, I guess it's supposed to be so hot, they're like super sweaty.
Yes.
And they come bringing the chain and wrapping it around him, and he's choking to death. That's when he
they wrap it around him and a pole, so he's tied to this pole.
But that's when he wakes up and he's kind of being choked by his blankets and realizes, whoa. And that, as opposed to just him kind of falling back into bed, which usually happens.
Yeah, he's tied to his canopy bed.
Yeah.
Can I just mention that the first couple of times I saw this, I saw it on a TV edit, and I don't know if it was because this is an intense scene for children to see or what, but I saw edits of this movie where he falls into the grave and wakes up in the bed. Wrapped up in the sheets, for no reason, because it's not connected to the chain bit, where
weird.
they just cut the hell sequence entirely for time. One presumes this is a long movie, but maybe for intensity. But I'm telling you, it was not until years later when I saw this on video, and then of course now we live in the universe of streaming video, when I saw the whole hell sequence, and it blew my mind. I just thought that was incredible. But as a kid, I never saw the hell sequence. It wasn't in the TV cuts I saw. And now Scrooge waking up and going through what Scrooge always goes through, which is the spirits all did it in one night. Scrooge gets to sing like Albert Finney. His voice drops considerably, and he becomes a different person. We can talk about the stuff he does, but physically Scrooge goes through a transformation. His walk is more erect. His eyes are more bright. He's not snarling. He completely physically transforms himself, a healthy 50-something guy, instead of the sort of snarled, putrescent thing that he was becoming. It's a neat transformation. It's a neat performance.
And he's a little manic at first, and then he kind of like eases into the role, eases into the notion of being generous and so forth, and by the end, by the time they're dancing past the church and so forth, he's beginning to get a little winded. Remember, there's this part where, he's standing up on this little balcony, and he's like, "Merry Christmas to all people." No one's even paying attention to him anymore. Did you notice that? I thought that was a really nice touch.
Yeah.
Like,
I actually thought
the action doesn't stop to focus on him.
I was actually worried that he was going to die right then, because he might
that
have
would
a
have
heart
been
attack or
horrible.
something. But I think he's the next. I would have liked to have seen the next day to see if he wakes up and goes, "Holy shit, what have I done? Where's all my money?
I just spent like half of my fortune."
So that's one thing that I sadly have become more Scrooge-like over the years. I watched this, especially this version, and we now have the internet and all kinds of things, and I don't think that people like Scrooge would ever get. I have very little faith anymore. And it's sad to me that people like Scrooge, even shown the error of their ways and shown all this stuff, would ever change their minds. I have absolutely no faith in that anymore. And that's sad.
Yeah.
I'm watching this and I remember see, even someone like this can be redeemed. And watching this as an adult who experienced this past year, I will say that I hope one day to gain that back. But as of today, when you can even show people, here's a thing that affects people when you want to redeem yourself. Here's ways you can help. Here's all of this stuff. Here's what you actually said. And no, I didn't say that. Like all of that stuff. I just don't think there are redeemable Scrooge-like people any longer. And I hope that there are, but that's my Scrooge-like thing. And I was watching this last night and I felt super sad and kind of bad that's in my heart now.
I think if they did experience the ghosts like he did, then they might be redeemed. But the problem is that doesn't really happen.
I don't think so. I don't think so anymore. That's why I'm sad.
You don't think that if Trump found himself in hell, he'd be like, "Oh."
Nope. Yeah, I think they would go. That was just a dream, and they would go back to solid gold toilets, there would be maybe a twinge of maybe I'll give them a towel for their Christmas bonus.
I think people are redeemed by their actual experiences that they have. So, for example, if you have a person who goes, "Oh, my child is gay, so now I'm not anti-gay because I see what a real."
But that doesn't happen. You can see it on the internet. It doesn't happen to people these days. Like,
it's happened to Cheney. I mean, it
But it
happens.
does.
Yeah, it happens to lots of people. So I'm just saying, but the problem is
Not
that
to
they have to have
everybody.
the actual experience to have and to have this change of heart, and it only happens on the thing that they had the actual experience around. So even if they have an experience where, oh my gosh, my child has cancer, and now I see how healthcare is needed, that still doesn't mean they're going to change on all this other stuff, but they might have that perspective about whatever. But anyway, yes. So I'm with you that it is hard to be heartened when you're so hardened in this day and
But,
age.
here's the thing, and obviously there's varying degrees of bad and good, but like the reason why a story like this I think is important isn't for the extreme examples, which would be the real life Scrooges of the world. It's for everybody, because nobody goes through life squeaky clean. Like everybody's done at least one bad thing. The idea behind this is that it's never too late to try and be your better self. And that's the lesson that you're supposed to learn from Scrooge. Is like he's an old man.
I think that's very wise.
Most of his life is over, and he still decides. He says it exactly in this movie. I'm going to start my life anew and try to be a better man. And that's really great.
I agree with you. And I think for most people, I think there are a lot of people who would definitely figure that out and definitely have changes of heart. However, I think the actual Scrooges of the world, I don't think that happens anymore.
They're hard to touch. I agree with you about that. Can I just say...
like I said, I'm sad that that's how I view things now, because I used to not. At this stage, looking at how the world is portrayed through news, through media, through just how people choose to portray themselves in social media, that is a piece of faith that I have lost in the people who are directly Scrooge. I have zero, I don't see redemption, and I wish that would be nice if they did, but that's how I perceive it, and that makes me sad that I think that. I mean,
I want to throw in this one thing though, to say that I know that I myself have benefited from some Scrooge-like transformations where I know there have been periods in my life. I've never been a miser like Scrooge per se. I've never been quite that wealthy. I'm not the same guy, but I know that there were times when I was miserable because of whatever, and so I chose to make life more miserable by being also sort of demonstratively unhappy. And you can, I don't know, I don't think there was ever there was never three ghosts in the night, but eventually you realize, wait a minute, I'm contributing to my own unhappiness and it's only making it worse. That kind of a transformation, I think, is possible for people to go through. I agree that taking care of those who are less fortunate, that's a tougher one, because a lot of people can find ways to talk themselves out of worrying about it over much, through all kinds of rationalization.
It doesn't have to actually be literal ghosts, because the ghosts are your baggage. The ghosts are your experience, and I mean, I'm sure there probably is somewhere a very academic and literate analysis of Dickens' work, that might already have touched on all
undoubtedly.
Of this, but
yes.
But I think that's like I said, there's a reason why this story has been done so many times and will be done more and more and more and more. And it's because that there's stuff here that resonate. And
we want to believe that we can be redeemed. We know, like Drew was saying, this is really not about the misers of the world. This is about us. This is about the people who screw up and let their own sorrow and confusion become weapons with which to hurt others, and the hope that we can come to recognize that and lay those weapons down and embrace our fellow human beings, and that is a beautiful message, and that's what all the dancing and so forth at the end, and that's why I love the fact that the focus leaves Scrooge, and when he says, Merry Christmas to all, no one's paying attention to him anymore, because it's not about him. It's about this communal experience of warmth and human kindness and so forth, and the trepidation with which he goes back home and hangs the beard and the cap on the door knocker, and he whispers to Marley that he's gonna go be with his family now, but there's a little bit of nervousness and fear because it's something unknown, but that's better than than where he's been. And I mean, I think that's a message for like your run of the mill human beings, because I kind of agree with Tony that the real misers of the world, the Trumps that were in hatches, all these bastards, that I don't know that there's redemption for them, but that's fine. There's redemption for the rest of us, and we can take care of ourselves and each other. So I think it's an uplifting message.
I agree, and like I said, it makes me sad that's the new part of the story, that of all the fantastical things that happen, that's the part that seems like unbelievable to me, which is bizarre. And I'm not saying that I am correct. It's just this is how I've come to view things over the years. I think that the other thing that the ghosts bring, that in this age of social media, of a constant ringing news source, et cetera, is oftentimes what they bring is a sense of self-awareness that perhaps Scrooge didn't have. He had no reason to break out of what he had done all these years and what his miserable yet comfortable in his own way life, right?
Yeah.
But in order to change, he had to become self-aware. But since so often we live in an echo chamber where you don't even have to do that. You can find a niche that just echoes everything. That level of self-awareness is probably what doesn't exist for a lot of people. And that contemplation, because there's also, and a lot of times in our lives, very little time for contemplation. You can have a constant source of everything in front of you all the time. And if you're not given to that mode, perhaps it may not be redeemable. But again, maybe that's why we have these movies, is because if you're constantly streaming or viewing something, I mean, I'm possibly being a hypocrite here. I am recording a thing for people to constantly listen to. So the irony is not lost upon me. But, that's why this maybe is so successful. We can bring this back through, this is media as well, this movie. So I think people are more likely to, and it's a little harder to find these days. So people are more likely to see more modern versions. But I guess that's why they keep getting remade, so that people can view them in a new light, perhaps. So, but there's lots of great versions.
As far as exposure to this film, this one's way easier to get a hold of than it was 20 years ago. Infinitely more. I mean, I don't think I would have known exactly how to get my hands on a copy of Scrooge in 1997. Unless I could find an old used VHS tape, but now that everything's, this is on YouTube, and YouTube never takes it down. I don't know if it's found its way into the public domain or what. It's not on Blu-ray right now, so
that's a shame though. Because there are some really amazing, the really just sumptuous sets. And there's some really, and I know Drew wasn't. I agree somewhat with some of the music that it's not as memorable to me personally. And I watch a lot of musicals because Rain watches a lot of musicals, and I
stand corrected. It is on Blu-ray.
Oh, cool.
I just want to mention it is on Bluray. I apologize. So,
but a lot of the costumes, the pipers piping and the dancers dancing and all of that stuff is really, there's some amazing dance sequences and very What's interesting to me, perhaps I'm wrong, there could be somebody who could correct me. If you made this more modern, even if you set it in a period piece, there is a tendency that didn't happen with this, perhaps because of it comes from this is like a UK production or BBC. Am I correct?
It's UK. It's Shepperton Studios.
Right. So the clothing tends to be more accurate. If they have people dancing, etc., in more modern versions, you'll have kind of tighter cuts or kind of slightly sexier, for lack of a better term, versions. More, the people who were dancing would probably be portrayed as more attractive, more traditional, even more Rockettes in some ways.
Yeah.
And the costuming way would reflect that, as opposed to the costumes in this particular one seem very, very period. Whether that's just because, hey, we know what London looks like. this is exactly London. We could this is in the same way that you do something in New York and filmed here, you're gonna have that older New York feel because there's a lot of accuracy can get into that. But I feel in more modern, even if you had that, so it's really kind of refreshing and cool to see the 70s version is very accurate, but still has all of these people dancing in these period kind of dances or these cool dance sequences. That I thought was really awesome. And, that those bits alone are worth the price of admission to me.
Yeah, no, there's so much good to look at in costume and the set. By the way, a lot of these sets, interestingly enough, we watched all those Amicus pictures, which all were shot on this studio. But a lot of the sets you're looking at here are sets that are still left over from the movie Oliver, which had been, just very shortly before this movie. So, which is, you have all those great outdoor sets for Oliver. Anyway, yes. So, wow. Okay, we should get our final thoughts and go in the same direction we went in, which was it was David, Julia, Tony, and Drew. So, David, what are your final thoughts on somebody listening to this show and thinking, hey, should I check out this this version of Scrooge again, and whatever you like to end out the year? We'll come around for endorsements in a sec, though, of course.
Sure. I think that Albert Finney's performance is a tour de force, a really, really amazing thing to behold. A lot of the supporting actors are fantastic as well. We've talked about Alec Guinness, but the guy playing Cratchit is also really, really wonderful. Doesn't sing particularly well, and I think that one of the issues that I had with the music isn't that the songs were not great, because I really liked I Hate People and I Like Life and all that final kind of medley that they do at the end. There's some really fun music. Just not all the performances were that great, indicative of the era. But of all the versions of the story that I've seen, this has frankly been the most affecting, and I'm really, really happy that Drew suggested that I come on board for this episode. Otherwise, I don't think I would have watched it. It's a really, really great film that I highly recommend. And as people are looking for things to queue up for the month of December to put themselves in the mood, I'd put this there, next to It's a Wonderful Life and all the other great films that people watch. So highly recommend it. Loved it.
Fantastic. Julia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about It's a Wonderful Life. It's very similar to that movie in that, you have the person who's miserable and all the focus on money and commercialism and poverty, and then you have this, supernatural confrontation with how things could be otherwise, and then you have the new, sort of the second chance at life. And I love stories like that. I think they're really affirming. And yes, I agree with Tony that in this day and age, it's a little harder to really buy that, but it's still heartwarming. And it's just a great version of this film. I like the music, okay, like I said, but I love the acting and the effects and everything. I think it's just a great film.
Wonderful. Tony, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad we did this version. I hadn't seen it in forever, and there's just so many bits that make it stand out. You could probably watch 50 versions of this, and there's probably, if you have cable at any given time from here until Christmas, there's probably going to be 3 of them on it, no matter what, which is awesome. I mean, that stands, this really stands the test of time, and people want to do new things with it, and that's really cool. Like I said, I wish I believed a little bit more in the ending still, but in this version, it's just really great. I highly recommend searching this out. It's beautiful. It's beautifully shot. The practical effects are great. Even the reveals, they don't even do weird non-practical things with the skeletal Ghost of Christmas feature. It's a reveal that happens fairly naturally.
Yeah.
Even the process shots look really cool, like all the ghosts flying around, and it's becomes this. During that sequence, it's almost Halloween and Christmas become these where the veil is thin, and all of that is just really done so well. I'm really glad that I got to see this again. It really opened my eyes up to this film in a major way. It's really, really great. Highly recommended.
I was actually just thinking, it's funny, we did Krampus last year, and we talked a lot about the timeliness of that after the election, and now we're back again doing another Christmas episode, and we're still talking about that as like sort of an odd bookend. So I think that it obviously shows the sort of emotional weight that the holiday season has on everybody, that you can sort of tie into these more heavy topics into stuff that's just supposed to be like seasonal entertainment. I think this is a good film. I think it's a really great version of this. I wish I liked the music as much as the rest of y'all. That didn't really work for me. But Albert Finney's performance absolutely does, and it's like it's a very atmospheric take, and that's really great to me. Like I wish we would see more, less versions that really kind of amp up the sort of childishness that could be inherent to this subject, and instead, play up more of the atmospheric qualities inherent to the original story. I really liked the way this movie looked, and I really liked the way the weightiness of Finney's performance. I think this is a really interesting version of this story.
That's very well said. That's very, very well said. I can add nothing to any of that other than I really appreciate that you guys would sit for this film. I'm so happy that we did it. This is one that to me is it's my favorite version of the Christmas Carol, and I've been forcing my family to watch it for years. So I'm so thankful. And finally, to quote the Ghost of Christmas Present, remember, Scrooge, time is short and suddenly you're not here anymore. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Okay, let's get our endorsements. And interestingly enough, this will be the final endorsement of the year. So if I hope you have something, and if so, let's make it good.
Make it good.
Yeah. So, David, do you have anything to endorse?
Well, sure. I mean, I'll endorse some TV shows that I've been watching. I think I mentioned in a previous podcast that Exorcist season 2 is really fantastic, and as it's like winding down, I think there's like maybe 2 episodes left. It's really, really good. So if you saw season 1 and you've been waiting to watch, to like binge the entire season 2, it's definitely worth it. Some fantastic performances. In some ways better than season 1, which I loved a lot. So that's definitely great. And I watched the Netflix series Ozark, which is really, really cool. Kind of like a low rent Breaking Bad. But I loved lots of really great performances. I watched it like dubbed in Spanish with my wife, and really enjoyed that. Watching the final season of Longmire, also on Netflix. Which is a nice slow moving, slow burn kind of a show, but definitely lots of plot lines from 6 seasons are paying off in the final season. So it's definitely a lot of fun and just great acting, and I don't know, just a really neat show that some people probably think it's cheesy, but I enjoy the hell of it. And speaking of cheesy, the Orville, I did not want to watch the show. I did not want to like the show, but I watch it and I like it. And Jason, you were saying some really interesting things on Facebook about the dearth of episodic TV and so forth, and so this kind of this hits a sweet spot, and especially for people who spent their teen years watching The Next Generation and so forth. It's just like really like nice warm macaroni and cheese. It's a lot of fun to watch.
It's so odd that people keep saying that it's a perfect parody of Star Trek: The Classic Series, and I'm like, have you ever seen Star Trek: Classic Series? Like, what are you talking about?
No,
this is Next Generation.
This is the Next Generation. It's totally Next Generation. And it's great, and it's got lots of laughs, but it's also got like heart, and it's
not a parody. That is the wrong way to describe it. No matter what Star Trek thing you think it's.
I agree. It's not a parody. He sold it as a
somebody,
parody, but it's not what he had in mind.
yeah, it's somebody on my my Facebook wall when I was talking with the Orville compared it to Alan Moore's run on Supreme, and how that was kind of a just him doing his version of Superman tropes. So this is
Right.
I think best seen is Seth MacFarlane doing Star Trek tropes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think that's a good way of describing it. And I don't particularly like Seth MacFarlane, but I like the show. It's so hard to explain to people, and it becomes serious in the most unexpected moments and does really gutsy stuff sometimes. And I'm like, wow, it takes me back.
Yeah.
And then I guess
I can't stand Seth MacFarlane, and I love this show. I mean, I've never had
I really
any
don't like
interest
him
in Seth MacFarlane.
Yeah, no, and when I saw that he was going to be like starring in the show as well, but he loves his stuff and he takes it very seriously. It's almost as startling as the fact that the news that Quentin Tarantino may be producing and directing the next Star Trek film with J.J. Abrams. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but that's the breaking news. So
that's weird.
That's wild. That is weird. So, and then the last thing.
In fairness, I wouldn't hold your breath on that one, because I remember back in the aughts when he was going to produce and direct a Friday the 13th movie, and that never happened.
Yeah, no, it's just like one of those unusual tidbits where you're like, what? Really? What would that look like? And then the last TV series that I would recommend it's a Korean kind of like police procedural crime drama serial killer thing called Stranger, and it's on Netflix as well, and it's a very slow burn. But it's about this. I guess he's a prosecutor who, when he was young, because he suffered these horrible migraines and aggressive spells, basically had kind of like a quasi lobotomy that's left him without really any emotions, but which makes him like a really fantastic solver of crimes and so forth. But
The Good Doctor you're talking about? That sounds like the Good. Sounds like the Good Doctor.
Well, the Good Doctor is another show that I love. But no, this is a different Korean film than the Korean show than the Good Doctor, because the Good Doctor is based on a Korean series. No, this is called Stranger, and it's like a murder mystery serial killer kind of thing. So
interesting.
That's it.
Well, I wish, David, that I had either you had been on last week or I had saved my last week one for this week, but I endorsed Coco, and I know you and I had a nice debate on Facebook about
Coco is
about Coco,
fantastic.
and not so much Coco, but really about the Frozen the Frozen
they're pulling it, right? Did you see that they're pulling it now? Starting the end of this week, they're no longer going to show that Frozen short at the beginning of Coco.
That makes me sad. I liked it, but whatever. But anyway, I got it. I understand the logic.
Yeah.
Anyway, but this week I want to talk a little bit about the marvelous Mrs. Maisel that Jason and I have been watching, which is a show on, is it Netflix, Jay?
No, it's on
anyway.
It's on Amazon.
Amazon? Okay, sorry, I missed what you said. Yes, Amazon. Anyway, it's a great show about this female comedian in the is it the late 50s? Yeah, I think it's late 50s.
1958. Yes.
Yes, and she's been left by her husband, and now she's trying to start up a comic career, and it's really good show. We're binge watching it. We're having a great time. So that's been my thing, but yes, I definitely want to second the Orville as well. I think it's really funny and interesting, and I just loved what they did this last time, where they were like forced into a two-dimensional existence or whatever for a little while. It was very cool. So yeah, they do some really creative things, and there's some good laughs, but also some neat character moments and everything. So I like that one a lot too, and yeah, it's been fun. I still haven't gotten out to see the Murder on the Orient Express, so I'm still waiting on that one, but I'm sure it's gonna be.
I saw that last night. It was really good. I love that the Draft House has 11 o'clock in after 11 movies, because that's my time.
Yeah.
The witching hour.
There's a Draft House not too far from me, so I was actually the only person in the theater, so I got to watch a private screening of Murder on the Orient Express last night, complete with popcorn.
Oh, that's fabulous. Fabulous.
To the point where I was like chewing popcorn. I'm like, I usually keep it down. And I'm like,
can make all the damn noise I want.
Yeah. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Anyway, that it is really good. I recommend it.
What do you got for us, Tony?
So I have like 3 things. I'm gonna go with a past one, Rare Exports in this holiday season. Always watchable, always good. And actually 2 of my parts work together. And this is not because we did the Shout Factory interview, but right now, shoutfactorytv.com, and I'm sure probably you can find it on the apps. I'm not positive, but definitely shoutfactorytv.com has a holiday favorites section, and it's got great stuff. So it's got Scrooge, it's got American Christmas Carol, it's got a Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour, a Weird Al Christmas episode, a Dobie Gillis Christmas episode, a Dennis the Menace Christmas episode, Route 66, Red Skeleton Show, like all this stuff that's Stingray Christmas, Father's Knows Best. I mean, it's crazy. And then Backlot, their original show. So part of that, that's my endorsement. Also, now you can catch one of my all-time favorite Christmas things is Santa Claus on MST3K, which is where it's a Mexican-produced movie where Santa fights the devil. Santa lives in a weird, creepy outer space heaven thing and spies on kids.
Right.
But even better, since this is Shop Factory TV, they have a backlot, a 22-minute episode with people talking about that Santa versus Satan.
Yeah.
I love
yeah. So that's some of my favorite things. And I'm also gonna say that it's not Christmas. Since this is our, we're closing out the season, it's not Christmas until you've listened to Christmas in Hollis by Run DMC. So
Amen.
If you're out there, that's the thing. Like there's a lot of Christmas. For example, I have the Heavy Metal Christmas with Run on Rudolph done by Lemmy, and the Twisted Sister Christmas CD, which is great, but it's not truly for me until Christmas in Hollis is there, and that can go on repeat as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to also say that should be the soundtrack of your in-between movies of watching Free TV's Christmas lineup.
That is really, really cool. By the way, that Santa Claus, if I recall, that was one of the ones that K. Gordon Murray brought to the United States. He had a whole career, this producer did, with getting Mexican movies, and he would dub them and sell them as Saturday matinees in the United States. So he did a lot of kids movies, but he also brought the Santo movies into the United States. K. Gordon Murray is a fascinating
man. Why is there not a Santo and Santa team up?
How do we know?
Could there be?
You could do that today. You could just go out and make a webcomic to end all webcomics.
Yes, David. Yes. How can we?
I think it would be awesome.
Can this be part of our production company? Like,
I think
that'll be our holiday movie. So I mean, Fire Shark isn't a holiday movie. Lava Shark isn't. But Santa and Santa versus Satan.
Oh,
please.
Santo and Santa versus Satan.
So give me this
against Satan.
Yeah. So what's the what's the translation for that, David?
It would be like El Santo y Santa contra Satanás. It would be great.
See, it sounds so good. Please, oh please, can I shift to the timeline where somebody has made this movie because I want it now.
It's not like you can't make. It's not like you can't make your own little home version, and then they'll show it at the Alamo before.
Well. It would make a good comic. I mean, again, like we talked about this weekend, you can still do it as a comic, and then it's much cheaper.
Yeah.
So David, let's get to collaborating.
I'm on it. Right in the script right now.
Next holiday season, I know what we got going on.
From
I know the one
creative team that brought you Castle of Horror. Come.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's just Castle of Horror Productions is what it's called.
Yes.
We're supposed to get our anthology together, and I think that would make at least a good thing.
I think this would be a great story in the anthology. There you go.
Okay. So that's fantastic.
Drew, yeah.
So Drew, what do you got for us?
Well, I actually picked up from, I also want to endorse Hops and Heroes. I am not a drinker, per se, at all, really. I don't drink. I haven't drank since I was 15.
Okay.
But Hops and Heroes is a great nonprofit comic book store / bar off of Cesar Chavez, and it's very small, but they have a great selection, and a lot of it is older stuff, and it's adjacent to the Austin Toy Museum. So if you find yourself over on the east side of Austin, it's a great place to visit. I was in there last week, and I was kind of looking for. I've been on a DC kick, for some reason. I still haven't made it over to see the Justice League movie, but it's nonetheless seeing those characters all over the place has put me on kind of a DC Comics mood. But I was wanting something self-contained. Like, I didn't really want to dig into like any of the Rebirth stuff or anything like that. And I noticed that they had Superman, Batman Generations by John Byrne, which was what they used to call Elseworld, which was essentially DC's many prestige series expansion on What If. And this was put out, I guess, in the late 90s. I remember reading it when it was out, and they actually did 2 sequels. They're both okay, but the original is definitely the best one. And the concept behind this is that it starts out in 1939 with the original version of Superman and Batman as they were originally depicted, and follows them all the way up to 1999. And every issue, John Byrne takes on the style of whatever time period he's setting the story. So, like, for example, the first issue really is done in the style of like a 1930s Batman and Superman comic, but the second one is set in like the 50s, and you get like a Mr. Mxyzptlk story. But throughout this, there's a overreaching arc of their decades long feud with Lex Luthor, and it's just really good stuff. And I love these kind of miniseries because you can get these familiar characters, but they're done in slightly different ways. So you can get a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, instead of a series where the next issue has to lead in to something else. But I really think this is some of the last stellar work we saw out of Byrne before he started to lose his mind. And Byrne, when he was in his prime, really was a triple threat, because there's a lot of people who can write comics really well, and there's a lot of people that can draw comics really well, but Byrne, at the height of his power, could do both equally well, and this is a good example of that. There's just top-notch plotting in this, and the art is gorgeous. And of course, Byrne is one of the definitive Superman artists in a lot of people's eyes. So
Absolutely.
You have some really great depictions of various different takes on Superman. The other thing, and I have to plug this. This is not for a few more weeks, but this is our last episode of the year. So most of you will not, by the time you actually get to listen to this, this will finally be out. December 20th on Comixology, there's going to be the Halloween Man Christmas special. So get really excited. You get to see Halloween Man adventure into the Celtic underworld and battle the king of the fairies for the soul of one man. You get to see Lucy Chaplin, Science Starlet, battle the riddle of the Frontier Phantom and save a bunch of beauty queens. This is good stuff. This is some of the best stuff that I've done in a while. It's got the art from both artists. I have James Figueroa from Mexico, and Kevin J. Richardson, who is from the States, and they both have done beautiful artwork. The colors throughout the whole thing from Dan Connor is just, it's stunning. So I really can't wait for people to see this. And I like the story, the Halloween Man story, the lead story, is one of the best things I've written in a long time. I'm not going to have false modesty about it. Like, I'm really proud of this, and I'm glad that we're finally going to be able to get to put it out.
Outstanding. That's outstanding. Well, cool. That's great. Okay. I don't have anything nearly as cool as that, but I will throw this out. First of all, endorse is our absolutely fantastic assistant, Ricardo Gutierrez, who has been the guy who has, for the past several months, been putting up our tweets that list out our endorsements on this show. That has been such a cool thing, and I'm so thankful for that. And I just wanted to endorse what a great job Ricardo's been doing. So that is
He's awesome.
Go Ricardo. That's awesome.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Ricardo. Beyond that, I don't have to say Marvelous Mrs. Maisel other than the title itself, because Julia already told you about it. Check that out. And I will say this: The Disaster Artist is an awesome book. The movie is coming up. It's coming out this week in Denver, so I'll go check it out this Friday. But I interviewed the author, Greg Sestero. So you'll find it in the Castle of Horror feed as another Castle Talk interview. So check that out, and it's a pretty fun interview.
Jamie's guitar player and her drummer are both obsessed with that book. Like when
Really?
we were on tour.
So is my son.
Yeah, when we were on tour.
Now.
Yeah. When we were on tour, they talked about it the whole time because Suna had already read it and Sarah was in the process of reading it.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It really is. And Tony, you were going to say something?
Oh, he actually came to the Draft House recently. Like, was in town, and I missed it, but a bunch of my friends went and said had a really great time.
Oh, good. Yeah. When we talked, he was just like on the way back from the thing at the Alamo, actually, oddly enough.
Oh yeah.
So
that's cool. So and then he showed like a sneak preview of his new movie, I believe, too. So
I don't know.
Yeah, lots of people. It sounded like a great dude, and really, people really enjoying the movie. So that's cool.
I can't wait to see it. And that brings us to the end of our Christmas episode. We are probably going to be out until sometime in January, but we'll be back. We're never gone as long as we think we'll be, because we just can't bear to stay away. But for those of you listening, this is such a wonderful, awesome, exciting year. If you like the show, leave reviews of it on iTunes, because they will filter out to all the other places that people listen to podcasts. It really helps. It makes a big difference. Thank you, everybody who's been on. You guys are all like family to me, and including Jamie and Adam, who are out there maybe in the universe, but not on tonight. All of you, I love you all, and I'm so thankful to be part of your lives. So, everyone, have a wonderful holiday, and we will see you in January.
Merry Christmas to all.
Yes, happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
God bless us,
indeed.
everyone.
Yes.
Everyone.
Bye.
All right. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.